This is a hot take too. Nick Taylor, you guys. I don't care how bad he's been since he won almost a year ago, right?
Well, it is time to talk the American Express here on the Golfbet Roundtable. We're trying to find the next Nick Taylor. But before we do that, we have to give some props. The turntables have turned.
Oh, how the turntables have turned.
And eminent prognosticator, Chris Brees. Maybe you should have gotten more bold with your Nick Taylor plays that Ben and I were so sure weren't going to quite pan out. Well done to you, sir. An early season round of applause.
I don't even know what that was right there. Cool After Effects. Hey, two things, guys. No, I didn't pick him as a winner. I picked him as a top 20. Ben, maybe it is a new Brees' bank builder because that was a plus 300 easiest money you're ever going to get. And two, you guys didn't even really disagree with me on that. You said Nick Taylor probably will eventually, some point down the road in the next 400 years or whatever, figure out how to win. I just think it's one of those things that I think we should talk about this week about who could be the next long shot. Who could be the guy, the Nick Taylor, that kind of makes sense, a guy who you know can do really well, Ben, but hasn't shown it recently. That's what I kind of want to get into with all this kind of stuff.
Well, I'm just going to quickly say about Nick Taylor, like when he gets in the mix, that guy is a killer. That's what we were expecting last year after he won Phoenix. Let's hope this year he keeps it going and continues on instead of like diving off the map and never seeing him again. But look, it is a good segue, Chris, because the American Express, if you ask me, is long shot week. I mean, it's the week where in betting terms, you are just looking at, 50, 60, 100, 150, 200 to 1 long shots. We've had plenty of them win in the past, including Nick Dunlap last year, who was 300 to 1. There's just so many variables. So it just doesn't seem right to be sweating the low odd favorites who can be beaten by random things. As you can see there on the screen, you've got 3-course rotation to deal with and the weather and the wind and whatever else happens day to day. You've got strokes game limitations because we only keep the top figures on the stadium course, one of the 3 courses, and that means that you might play well on that course but terrible on the others, or vice versa, and you're not getting the real effect of who's doing what. And because it's a Pro-Am, we have slower greens and easy pins, at least for the first 3 days, and that just means it's a shootout. And anyone can essentially win if they get hot over a 4-day period. This is not a major setup where the cream rises to the top. It's anyone on tour is good enough to win a week like this.
I agree with Ben's points that there are a lot more variables this week in play. I disagree that weather is one of them. It's going to be 75 every day, and the only question is if the wind blows 2 miles an hour or 3 miles an hour. But the other stuff is pretty fair and legit, and I do think this is a big field, and I think you're wise to kind of spread your bankroll. I will say, I'll push back a little bit. The top of this field, even without Xander Schauffele, was the pre-tournament favorite. He withdrew on Monday. There's 5 or 6 guys right at the top that I'm sure, Chris, we're going to get into where I think that we could definitely have a winner on this screen if you're asking me, and certainly I would expect at least one of these guys to be in the mix, to potentially be in the top 5 with a chance to win. As we saw last year with Sam Burns was in the mix, Xander, Justin Thomas, all those guys were there. And then we had this crazy storyline with Nick Dunlap as the amateur winning. We weren't that far away from this being a chalk event like we had seen a couple times in the last 5 years.
The frustrating thing here, if you look at anything, is yes, we lost Xander on Monday, and we lost Scotty Scheffler obviously in the weeks leading up with his hand injury as well. If you add those two to the field, then it even better upset week, even better long shot week, because you get even juicier odds on those guys that can win. The one thing that them not playing is, as you see, it brought some of these numbers down, and there were juicier odds on these guys beforehand, and now it's even more reason to stick to what I said. Look, yes, Justin Thomas was 3rd last year. Sung Jae's been in the top 25 every year. Sam Burns should have won last year. Double bogey finish to let Dunlap in the door. Cantlay's had a couple of top 10s. Finau's had a couple of top 10s there. They're all got reasons they can win. And I agree, Will, that 2, maybe 3 of them will be in the mix. I just think those variables mean sweating these numbers just seems why. Why are we doing that this early in the season?
So what does that mean? What does it mean? To the better this week if you want to bet? Look, what does it mean? Okay. What do they do?
So if you've got a theoretical $50, right, and normally you'd bet on 5 guys that are probably towards the chalk end, maybe all of them or 4 of them are under 50 to 1. You're going sort of, here you're going Sung Jae and Thomas and maybe Burns or Cantlay as well, and then you find a flyer. Well, I'm saying no, get $5 bets, get 12 guys. $2 bets on huge long shots. Do whatever you got to do. Get yourself 12 guys to sit and chase that are 50 or higher, and just sit back and enjoy the shootout that it's going to be. Because otherwise you're getting frustrated, like I was last year, riding Xander Schauffele, where this guy, who was a Neville at the time, props to Nick Dunlap, legendary status now, having won twice last year, first as an amateur. But at the time, it was frustrating to see a guy like Xander, who was clearly better than him at golf, unable to close because of sort of the vulnerabilities of these rotations and limitations I'm talking about. So I just think not worth it this time of year. Save some money either for the bigger events, the signature events, or the majors, or spread your money wider and enjoy the potential for getting a lottery pick. As I said, we've had he was 300 to 1. We had 200 to 1 as well. Win it. I think Andrew Landry wasn't it that won, and then who else have we got? Well, we got Long was 1,000 to 1 when he won this thing. So they're out there.
I mean, listen, I think that Ben is a little bit hurt from Xander letting him down last year. I think that the frustration, yes, when you take the chalk and they don't win, that's frustrating. But it's also frustrating when you don't take the chalk and they cruise to a 3-shot win and you spend 4 days saying, why didn't I pick this guy? He was jumping off the map, and it was so clear that I should have at least had a piece of him. And that's where we are, Chris. With my winner this week, I am taking one of the chalk.
Yeah, who's listening to Ben? Not you.
Yes, listen. There's room for long shots, but I need to have a piece of Sung J M. He was 14 to 1 before Xander withdrew. Now he's down to 12 to 1, a co-favorite with Justin Thomas. This guy's been lights out at this tournament. Last year's T25 finish was his worst result in 6 appearances. He is absolutely primed and ready to go. He's won on a Nicklaus course down at PGA National. He's won in the desert at TPC Summerlin. Everything is there. Every box is checked. He's playing well coming in off of Hawaii. So I don't want to sit here for 4 days and watch Sung J M shoot 75 under par and wonder why I didn't at least take a piece of him at 12 to 1 when I knew that he deserved to be 12 to 1. So I agree. Spread it around this week. Add some long shots, but I'm anchoring my card with Sung J M off the top.
And international team eligible. Well, the first 2 weeks have been guys that are not from the USA. Keep the streak going, Sanjay. That'd be cool. Look, Will's right on this guy. Like he hasn't finished outside the top 25. He's going to be probably the one in the mix. I'm advocating that the first sort of 8 to 10 guys on the board, you may take one and then build around that. Sanjay isn't my one guy, but he would have been my second guy. So if you did that, I can give you some love there. But me, in the chalk, if I was looking at anything chalky, it'd be maybe Sam Burns for a top 10 or something along those lines, right? Like that's the one chalky thing. Everything else, I'm going back, and just hands back, enjoy watching the shootout and hoping one of my guys comes good.
And you're going nostalgia with your winner, Benny. You are going hardcore on these long shots, and Mr. 59 himself, Adam Hadwin.
Yes, course record at La Quinta, 59. Adam Hadwin, he's got 2 runner-ups, a third, 2 sixes, T6s at this event. He's never missed a cut, I think, in 9 tries. Another international team member, Adam Hadwin, another guy that, can get it done, keep that streak alive. But look, Will said that Sungjae ticks all the boxes here, so does Adam. Adam is the type of guy that's proven he can play well on those courses, doesn't mind getting amongst it, doesn't mind the slower green speeds and going low. And you're getting juice. This is the key to it. You're getting 75 to 1 instead of 14, 12 to 1, and you can have some fun watching it. Don't put the house on him. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying put a few dollars on and have fun watching him shoot out and go low. And I think he just is a horse for this course, if you will, and you're getting good juice.
I think we have to talk to our stats group. Have we ever had back-to-back Canadian winners on tour?
I would doubt it.
The Mike Weir zone?
Good point.
I don't know. Maybe there's something there for our friends north of the border. But listen, I am bullish on Adam Hadwin this week. I definitely almost said Adam Stanley, thinking about our Canadian friends. But Hadwin does check those boxes. Listen, when we talk for PGA Tour Fantasy, I've got Hadwin on my roster this week. I think that he's someone that can really differentiate. He's going to put up a lot of birdies. I go back and forth because you look at Nick Taylor now with 5 wins in the PGA Tour. He's probably won more than he should. Adam Hadwin with 1 probably hasn't won as much as he should for as long as he's been consistent on tour, as many times as he's put himself in position to contend and potentially win. I think back to the Rocket Mortgage a couple years ago. He lost that playoff to Ricky Fowler. If you do expected goals in soccer or hockey, if you have expected wins for Adam Hadwin, it's higher than 1. He hasn't gotten that second one yet. We're going on 8 years now since that Valspar win. So I like him maybe in the finished markets more than the outright, but certainly from a fantasy perspective, he's going to be on my short list.
Well, Hadwin too, and this is like I'm sitting down doing sleepers. He could still be the outright sleeper at 75 to 1, right? He's still got odds that you can consider this guy a sleeper. And when you have that, when I do pick an outright sleeper, what I'm actually advocating is a guy that you should bet or could bet outright, top 5, top 10, top 20, top 30, top 40. Because of these odds, he can be across the board. And that's someone who, honestly, I think you could throw him across the board and you're going to get paid somewhere.
He would be the kind of pick who nobody would see it coming, exactly like Nick Taylor last week. My winner, you could say Eric Cole, you wouldn't see coming. I'm wondering if he's still figuring out if he can get this thing done and close the door at the end, because he's been there many times, Will. I think if we're thinking about long shots who you think were under the radar, who are playing better than you thought they were, and then you're thinking, how did they get there? Eric Cole is that guy. I mean, he played well last week, certainly helped his causes. He was in the mix at Sony, had a really good fall. You thought he had at least 2 or 3 tournaments in the last 20 that he's played that you thought he had a chance to win, just didn't do it. I think Eric Cole, if we're looking at somebody who hasn't won, who's a big long shot, I really like Eric Cole this week.
I get what you're saying. I still, you don't mind it? I mean, I think that my thoughts on Adam Hadwin are the same as Eric Cole in terms of expected wins, and he hasn't gotten it done. Certainly trying to get in that winner's circle for the first time. When I look at La Quinta and I look at this week, you know they're going to be birdies. You know Eric Cole is going to make birdies. The question is, can he avoid the squares on the scorecard? And that's been the issue. It hasn't, when he puts up a 68, it's not with 3 birdies and 1 bogey. It's with 7 birdies and 5 bogeys. And so that's just a different mindset, a different mentality, and a different challenge, frankly, than maybe some of the other guys are facing in this field, because once he gets that part of the game righted, he's absolutely going to be back in the mix like we saw a couple years back when he won Rookie of the Year, because the birdie production, the birdie conversion percentage is always going to be there with Cole. It's just a matter of, sorting out the other part of it.
I look at it like this too, Chris, and I started to wrestle with this because I think we spoke about this earlier in the season preview too. I'd worked out that almost all of the tour winners, like a huge percentage of them, had a top 20 finish in like their last 3 starts.
Yeah, you said like 80%.
Early in the season, obviously, to count that form yet. But still, I'm still looking at Sony last week, and I'm looking at the top 20 guys from Sony, and I'm picking guys out of there going, okay, we know that form travels. We know that someone in this group is going to be there or thereabouts again this week. So, yeah, like I'll get to that later in my sleepers column this week, except there are a few guys who finished there in the top 20 last week that I think can keep the roll going. And I think that's something just to be mindful of. Not as much just yet, but as we get further down the line, start looking at recent form, last 2 or 3 weeks, somebody from that top 20 is going to pop and potentially be a winner the next week.
We will get into best bets here in a second. We're going to do a new segment, DraftKings Rapid Fire. DraftKings Sportsbook has markets out there, prop markets, of some of these favorites. You want to bet on the favorites? DraftKings has it for you. Ben and Will are going to go rapid fire, 1 versus 1. Which bet are you going to take at the top? Let's start Sung Jae and Justin Thomas. Will, top 5, which one you taking?
I'm going Sung Jae. Listen, he's my top pick for outrights this week at 12 to 1. I think he's going to have a big week. Never been outside the top 25. Give me the South Korean. JT is going to be much more hit or miss this week.
Get off. JT was T3 last year. Sung Jae's been in the top 25 the whole time, but the problem is he's never been in the top 5. I don't think he's been outside the top 10 the whole time. So while he's good, he's not that good here. Give me Thomas.
Patrick Cantlay plays well here. Top 10 versus Sam Burns.
Sam Burns should have won last year. T6. I think Sam Burns is your chalk pick this week. He's captaining my fantasy team. I like Sam Burns here. I think Cantlay will be there or thereabouts, but not as high as Sam Burns.
Cosign. I'm right there with you, Benny. All those reasons.
13 seconds. Tony Finau, Tom Kim, top 20.
Take the juice, Tom Kim, just because Tony Finau has been hurt and we don't know. I don't know. So I just don't know enough about Tony and his fitness.
No. Higher ceiling on Tony Finau. Give me the long drives off the tee on each of these 3 courses.
That went well. We're going to tally up each week, see who was right, who got the juice. We'll do some units on this, guys. How about that? And maybe each week we can look at the leaderboard. Is that a good idea?
I like that. That's a very good idea.
We've done favorites. We've done whether you bet on the favorites or not, but there's best bets out there. There's money to be had in a lot of these markets this week. Ben, let's start with your best bet. You've got a couple, but this new kid, you really like this new kid.
There's something about Frankie Sappin that's going to hit. Like, he's a 25-year-old stud in the making. He played decent at the US Open last year. You're not going to get this sort of juice on him for much longer. He is going to light up the tour at some point. I want to be on the bus before everyone else is. So we're getting plus 360 on a top 20 this week. Again, we don't know how he's played on this course before. He's a rookie. He hasn't done this, hasn't done that. But he has the goods, much like Nick Dunlap showed us last year. He can come out swinging and have a crack. He's a winner on Corn Ferry. He knows how to go low. I want the odds while I can get them, because soon enough he's going to start racking up the T11s, T7s, T12s, and these odds are going to shrink. So get on him now while you can.
Chris, I think back to our time with that we had interviewing the new crop of Corn Ferry grads, and we asked those guys who's going to be the standout stud from this group, and we got way more votes for Frankie Sappin than I was ever expecting. Mm-hmm. He is on the radar of his peers, and I think, as Ben said, he's going to be on our radar as bettors and handicappers here before too long. So I think it's a good lean there, Ben.
We spent a lot of time talking about Sappin. We spent a lot of time in the last year talking about Daniel Berger. Why is it this week, Will?
I'm just going to keep doing it every week. I think that he's on the rise. Maybe it's not an auto play, but man, I just sit there plus 500 for a top 10 finish on an event where he has the game to succeed, and we've seen a bunch of pretty good finishes in the last 12 months as he started to trend back towards 100% healthy and trend back towards the guy that won a couple times in the PGA Tour early in his career. So yeah, it's not an auto for me on Daniel Berger top 10 finish or a top finish market, but let's say it's on the short list of targets on a week in and week out basis.
Look, I love me some burgers, as you know, boys, and I love the fact that my random fact from last week turned out to be true. Hideki did not do so well at the Sony Open after spending all his time at the restaurants, and you guys all laughed at me. Let me throw the intangible out on Daniel Berger.
Okay, I was wondering where you're going with this.
But this is an interesting one. Right now, just the last few days, and all of this week and next, the Australian Open tennis is on. And guess who loves his tennis and stays up late nights to watch tennis? Daniel Berger.
You're
Daniel
serious?
Berger is going to be watching tennis through the night, and he's not going to be as switched on as he would be any other week.
Has he said that?
Look, I know Berger loves tennis. His dad's a famous tennis coach. He could have been a professional tennis player, if not a golfer. I'm telling you, he keeps an eye on it, unless things have changed in the last few years. But he loves keeping an eye on things. And look, the time change is a brutal one. I know it I know it too well for the Australian summer of tennis. So it's just a little thing that might have him just a touch off this week. I hope I'm wrong, because I do think he, as well, and as we all spoke about, he is on the way back, and it would be good to see him up and in the mix.
Keeping an eye on the results is a far cry from staying up all night for 2 straight weeks. What are you talking about?
He'll be up. He'll be watching. Depends on. I forget. Look, I've forgotten off the top of my head which players specifically he does like to watch and that he might stay up for. So I can't throw that out there. And maybe because it's the first week in the early rounds, he won't be as big of a deal. But just telling you, it's that little thing, and it only takes a little thing in a shootout like this. We'll see.
Hey Daniel, what'd you shoot today? I don't know, but I can tell you who won the Australian Open yesterday. Does that count?
Who went through to the third round? He'll know. I'm telling you that.
All right, I want to talk Patrick Cantlay because to me, Patrick Cantlay is becoming the random successful golfer. You have no idea when he's going to do well. I can't even name the last time he won. Will, you probably can. It's been over a year, right?
BMW.
Yeah.
Okay, so
couple
years back. Cantlay, if we're going to go random on Patrick Cantlay, this is the place for me. I'm going to go top 10 plus 220. He clearly plays well enough here just about every single time he's here. If this guy's going to get in a shootout, he certainly can do it. His success was more so previous than the last couple of years, but I think Patrick Cantlay, if we're going to talk about somebody who is going to come out of the blue and say, oh, there's Patrick Cantlay, he's going to do it at a place he's familiar. And I think for a top 10 against this field, I love plus 220.
So I'm going to jump in first here, Will, because I'm going to say this. When the markets first came out, before we had Xander withdrawn and Cantlay was at 20-1 or 22-1 to win this thing, It was the first thing that my eye came to, and I thought, wow, he plays so great here and whatever else. And then I started looking into things and having forgotten that the last 2 years, not so much. Not so much the last few years. So that is where I start to worry. Yes, before with like at 20, 22 to 1 to win, I would have been interested. Once he started coming down into that 18 or whatever it is now, I started to sort of worry because of the more recent form. I think we will see Patrick Cantlay step it up again. I think he's got unfinished business at certain courses if he gets to play them again this year. But I'm not sure that the shootout is the time for him.
What I really liked the fact that 76% of his rounds here have been 68 or better in the last 4 years alone. Last 4 years.
But you could shoot that there, Chris. You could shoot that there.
From the red tees, maybe.
I mean, look, my inability to accurately predict Patrick Cantlay is well documented. I think I broke my own rule at Century Week and tried to do it. I'm not going to do it again. I wish you all the best, but I have no.
That's my bank builder this week. Patrick Cantlay plus 220.
There are plenty of bank builders out there, mate. But there's also the long shots. Get on the big numbers.